Welcome. This is Sharon's Book RX, or Sharon's Book Prescription. And today I am very excited to be welcoming George Redmond, Ali KAMANDA, and Dr. Barbara STROUD to our panel to discuss their new book, George and Ali, not Dr. STROUD, Black Boy, Black Boy. If you all would introduce yourselves and give me a short bio. And George, I'm going to start with you.
All right, well, thank you for having us. My name is George Redmond. I was born here in Asheville, North Carolina. Currently, I am an attorney. I used to work for the district attorney's office as an assistant district attorney and as a juvenile prosecutor. I am currently also teaching as a legal adjunct at South College in the legal department, as well as serving on several boards. Just glad to be here. Got a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, beautiful family. And I am so fortunate to be on this podcast.
Oh, thank you. And Ali, can you say something nice too?
Yes, I'll do my best. My name is Ali KAMANDA. I was born and raised in Sierra Leone, West Africa, the Lion Mountains. Lived there till I was 13. And I always love to at least reference that I was fortunate enough to be one of those who got to leave before the Civil War had started. And my family and I relocated to the US. I'm happily married to a very beautiful woman. Her name is Julia. I've got two amazing kids. I run a nonprofit back in my home country of Sierra Leone called Salmon Rising. And just like George said, just extremely thrilled to be a part of this and looking forward to talking about Black Boy, Black Boy.
Thank you. Me too. And Dr. STROUD, can we hear from you?
Certainly. My name is Dr. Barbara STROUD. My pronouns are she, her, and they. I identify as a descendant of enslaved Africans because I'm very proud of the history of my people and remain mindful in everything that I do of the unique struggles of people of color, all BIPOC folks in this country. My primary areas of interest are children 0 to 5 who've had trauma in their life. And I now am a professional consultant and I teach other people how to support young children who are having difficulties.
Thank you. And also thank you all for the work that you are doing. We are going to start with a spread from the book, and now we're going to try and see if I can actually do this well. There we go. And George or Ali, would you like to read the first page?
All right. Dear boy, black boy, rise up, it's time. It's a new day and a chance to shine. Shine like the sun, magnificent and bold. A new chapter begins, your story's untold. A story of courage that starts on this day. Courage like these men who paved the way. Dear boy, black boy, what do you see?
Okay, and then I believe we were going to also read the last 2 pages.
Yeah, let's see what you have up there.
Yeah.
Take it over, Ali.
Sharon has for us now. Okay.
All right. One of our favorite pages of this one. This should be the last part. Dear boy, black boy, I believe in you so. Let's start your journey. Ready, set, go.
Yeah, excellent. And that was the very last page instead of me
Yes.
giving you the next to last page.
No worries. We want people to go in and check it out, and turn those pages yourself.
That's a book. That's true. That is true.
We also want to limit Ali's reading as well. That's something we strategically want to do.
And this is what you can do with people when you've known them for so long. Give them crap. Exactly. Okay. So Dr. STROUD, as a clinical and developmental psychologist, you spent much of your career working with children and families in largely urban communities, facing multiple economic and social hardships. So how might you encourage other professional communities who are working with 0 to 5 to use Black Boy, Black Boy?
I think, thank you to the authors, because I think it's just a beautiful text in so many ways. And the rhythm of it, I like the rhythm of it, because I think children also live in rhythmic spaces more so than we do as adults. We kind of get caught in being more in our brain and less in our bodies, but kids are still in their flow. And that's a lovely element of the book. I think for professional communities, particularly early care and education, Head Start, preschools, family daycares, could really make excellent use of this book. And I honestly want to say I would recommend it. I would love it to be in absolutely every single preschool in America. And the reason for, should I say that again? Every single preschool in America. I say that So when I put my parent hat on, if I were to walk in the bookstore, there's so much in the book. I have a daughter, she's one child. I'd say, black boy, black boy. Well, maybe I don't need that book, right? Even though my child is, right? It sort of speaks as a parent, do I need this book if I have a black boy? However, if it's in an educational system, and I have parents that wouldn't be buying books when I worked in urban community. They wouldn't be buying books for their kids. They're trying to buy food and pay the lights. That's just the truth of it. However, if we have it in every childcare community, this provides access for those who don't have access to books, and for kids who have parents that don't read, right, or can't read. And for folks who are working in largely, I've worked with communities that are in rural communities. I've worked with childcare providers that have only white children in their community. And they're like, well, why do we need these books? You need these books because that's the exact community where we need to support diversity. And through children's literature, we can expose kids at a very young age to communities that might not be in their neighborhood. So I'm going to stop there because I kind of tell these things for a living. So let's get back to the authors and hear their brilliant words.
And I'm going to jump in for just a minute, if George and Ali don't mind, and talk about Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, who has the theory of children's literature, mirrors, windows, sliding glass doors, in that children should see themselves. They should see through windows into the experiences of others, and they have sliding glass doors to step into those. We can only live one life within this body, but we can live literally millions by reading, and kids need to read about themselves, especially in diverse communities. They need to see themselves, and in less diverse communities, they need to have their doors broken wide open. So yes, absolutely, we want to see this everywhere. And remember, Black girls can also read Black boy, and Black boys can read Black girl, which will be coming out later, as can children of all ethnicities. Thank you. We all have our soapboxes, don't we? Yes, we do. Okay. Yes, we do. So I'm going to ask also then, you, Ali and George, you met in college. So did you ever think, watch me go off track now, did you ever think that you two would be doing something like this together?
No, I'm going to let George actually sort of head that one off. Honest truth is, no, we never saw ourselves in this position. We did start off on the sort of like the similar track. We were both in communications as majors, and we both have this natural affinity and love for filmmaking. And so that was the first track that we were going to go down in terms of our creative side. And so I think this, based on how the inspiration of this book came about, was just something totally organic, and it just happened. And now we find ourselves on a path that it's allowing us to maybe tap into a different side of ourselves too, in terms of what we present and what we're creating, and the views we're trying to espouse and share. I really love what Dr. Stroud just said, about the importance of the book. And before I talk too much, it really means a lot because it's emblazoned on the cover. It says Black boy, Black boy. So the truth is that you see it and you feel like it's just written for that particular kid. But what George and I have come to understand, what we appreciate and welcome as that challenge, is that it's actually the best opportunity for us to showcase the humanity of Blackness. And as you well stated, turn that into a window. So it's going to be a mirror for Black boys and for Black kids, but it's actually also, that window for others to be able to read into that. And again, just appreciate the love story between a father and a son. But yeah, no, we did not see ourselves down this path in that sense. We just saw ourselves as fathers, trying to raise, healthy kids. So it's a blessing to be a part of this right now. But sorry, George, let me not take up. You go ahead and share that.
I mean, geez, Ali. I mean, just say, I mean, we really had no clue, right? I mean, in college and undergrad, we were really just trying to graduate. I think together with our relationship, how organically it grew into this sort of brotherhood. We knew that our passions were similar with creativity. Now, we didn't know what that creativity would turn out, but we knew that that was something that we shared together. I think this book came into existence based upon our growth, and not only individually, but as brothers, right? And how we became fathers, and then what kind of role we were taking. So that kind of inspiration, that kind of thought really only kind of came about, unfortunately, based on a tragedy of COVID and George Floyd. And so that's kind of what led us here to writing this book and being inspired to showcase Black Boy, Black Boy.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you both for your answers. That was wonderful. Yes, and it is heartbreaking that it's taking tragedies for people to notice, or not you all, notice or speak up. And it's great that something lovely and positive is also being inspired. We are going to look at a page with Colin Kaepernick. Speaking of inspiration, let's do this. Okay, let me switch it over this time. There we go. Would one of you like to read this? And I'm going to ask Dr. Stroud some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read it.
Go ahead.
Dear boy, black boy, what do you see? That's Colin Kaepernick taking a knee.
I'm going to leave the spread up for a minute because it's just gorgeous. And Dr. Stroud, this was one page in particular you were thinking about how you would approach it and how you might use it as a resource.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, the art is so beautiful. And I know you gentlemen have sort of probably heard that more than once. I do want to backpedal just a moment and speak to the title, because I do also think that our Black boys and our Black girls need positive images of themselves, and our history is not taught in schools. And so the other piece of this book is it's a lovely narrative of Black history, which again, all children, boys, girls, non-binary, and of every, race, creed, color, ethnicity need to be exposed to. So that, let me just say that. What I like about this page is Colin Kaepernick's knee was controversial. Everyone may not agree with what he did, and that's fine. This is not about what you necessarily support politically or what have you. It's an opportunity to share with children that you have the right to peacefully communicate your dislike of things that are happening in this nation. I think that's a really important message. And I don't think any educator should deny a child the right to that knowledge and that experience as evidence in this page. So I would challenge professionals to get past whatever their biases are, or questions or concerns or frustration around the choice that someone else made, and give children permission to know that we can all hold different ideas. And the reason I want to underscore that is that's a really huge life skill called perspective taking. We need to be able to understand that other people have different views than we do, and it's okay. We don't have to dislike each other. We don't have to say you're never going to be my friend again. You can like bananas and I can like strawberries, and we can still be friends. And we, you know what I'm saying? There's enough divisiveness in this country that we don't need anymore. So I think part of this page specifically allows a professional to come to terms with, if they have any thoughts about it, come to terms with this behavior and say, this man made a choice to do something to peacefully protest an oppression to his people. And that's your right in America. I might have done it differently. Maybe you think the knee is not okay. And you can say that too. So here's this great opportunity, I think, to, again, I'm repeating myself, but to just let parents know that people hold different ideas. People hold different perspectives. People hold different political views. That's all that we can accept, that people have different views. You're not allowed to hurt anyone. You're not allowed to hurt anyone. And you're also not allowed to deny people their basic rights. So that's kind of where I would go with this page. And I think it's important that educators have a tool to use this, particularly if they have a feeling about it. All right, that's all I want to say.
Lovely, lovely.
Excellent. Thank you. George and Ali, would you like to react to that? Besides feeling really good about yourselves?
No, I mean, that's where it starts, because when you have a professional who actually can speak to sort of the intent behind that, then it validates, what we were trying to achieve. And as you can see, when you look at the photo itself, we were very intentional in how we communicated that to our publishers, to make sure that this particular choice that we led off with in the book did not draw away from his real purpose. So as you can notice, the path and everything is kneeling on. We don't have the flags per se anywhere near him. The flag itself is flying, high in the background, way off. because we want folks to focus on that, just as Dr. Stroud said, the perspective. And we want kids to celebrate the choice that a man like this made, because that's where we want to discuss that we all have that capacity. So what makes him great isn't anything else but what he decided to do as a, as that human being. He chose to do something. Of course, he sacrificed a lot, but being willing to make that choice for the greater good is what actually, earns him this honor to be put where we have actually placed him. And he's leading off the book. So we hope that it can actually be that discussion piece. And I really love that Dr. Stroud mentioned perspective, but that's exactly what we're going for. And we're hoping that educators can see that part, because a lot gets lost in the noise, and then you're not really having a meaningful conversation, and we're just actually deflecting on the issue itself, and we don't really get, to get the right answers. But we want kids to get that opportunity. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. George, do you want to add to that?
Just again, thanking Dr. Stroud for being able to piece together some of the thoughtful topics and discussions that this page will bring up. And we did it purposefully. The reason why Colin Kaepernick was the first, obviously he's a little bit more relevant, but it's because some of the inspiration that came about for this book was part of the experience I had being a teacher before I went to law school. And when I used to teach, I used to ask kids what is it they wanted to be in life. And they always said ballers or rappers, right? And so there's this two-way track. And so we wanted to start with Colin because he's what every kid dreamed about, right? I mean, he is this guy who's made it to the NFL, who's got millions of dollars, but he sacrificed that. His sacrifice was to stand up for something. And some people think, again, that the sacrifice may not have been worth it, or there's different ways that people can do that. But we're just scratching the surface with Colin. Before Colin, there was Muhammad Ali. Before Muhammad Ali, there's Jim Brown. There's all these athletes that took stands. We wanted to highlight Colin because what he did inspired a change, not only in the United States, but in America. And it shows young boys that even though their dream may be to be able to play professionally, that some things are worth a little bit more, and that's humanity.
Ooh, thank you. That was outstanding. Thank you all for that. So we now know why you picked Colin Kaepernick, who is amazing, and yes, a great personal sacrifice. Stood up or knelt for what he believed in. So how did you choose the people to highlight in your book? Because picture books are only 32 pages and there's a huge history here. So how did you choose and who did you leave out?
Kick it off, Georgie.
Well, how did we choose? Well, ironically, we fell into the same sort of mindset that kids did, right? We just chose athletes and entertainers. Unfortunately, because that's all you see, right? And that's what we wanted to change with this book, is we knew that the kids always got on Black History in February, MLK, Frederick Douglass, Rosa Parks, George Washington Carver, and right, they always got the same set of 5 individuals, and it was on like a repeat, like a radio. Our goal in this book was to inspire change and hope. We're hoping that they get off this 2-track system of wanting to be ballers and rappers, and they can be a doctor, they can be a pilot, they can be an engineer, they can be whatever they inspire to be. So what came about was us trying to make sure that we reached a diverse set of Black historical figures that covered a variety of professionalism. And so each one of them has a certain type of character that we wanted to make sure that we showcased in this book. And so that was one of the ones, say, for example, William Goines, the first Black Navy SEAL, right? To being brave and to be serving for your country, the devotion that's needed at that time when he was going through his training and serving for the war was something that we wanted to make sure that we put across. Other things like Arthur Mitchell and his dance. Again, we could have chosen a lot of dancers, but we wanted to make sure that we showcased individuals, because in a book, we're talking about trying to teach and educate individuals. And so when people don't know them, we felt like we've done our job. And so I'll let Ali speak a little bit more, because we wanted to make sure that we were also inclusive, not only with African Americans, but with Africans as well.
It was a fun process. I think that's the beautiful challenge in all of that, because the truth is there is just a canon of individuals throughout, Black history. And it was also the opportunity to showcase that Black history is not just American history. You know, it's actually worldly. So there are Africans who have also contributed to this. You know, and it goes beyond the normal pale of what we fully understand or have been taught mostly. So for us, I think the fun part really started once we recognized that instead of using the Fab Five, you know, and once you start opening up, you know, the history books and look, you get blown away just by the sheer number of folks who have really just done amazing things with their lives. And so we then got intentional about the different categories, and we'll give a shout out to our agent for really sort of honing us in on that point and saying, like, if you actually are doing this, this is brilliant. Like, just imagine what you can accomplish in teaching some of these kids this stuff. To where it then came about, it's like, okay, well, we're going to be leaving some folks out because, as you said, first time authors, we had no idea it's going to be 32 pages, and they hit us with that one like, oh man, there's a cutting room floor right there. Now you got to go back, and now you got to start checking names off. So, for example, my father named me after Muhammad Ali. You know, he was off the list. You know, and when people ask me about that, I was like, yeah, you know, I had a good rhyme, float like a butterfly, and this thing, I had some going with that one. He was off. My father also named me after Stephen Bantu Biko. And so he was another one who was left off the list based off of, again, the categories we already had set up that we were looking at. So there were quite a few, you know, and it maybe leaves the opportunity to create more books that actually can speak on that. But I think for us is to just recognize again that with that huge canon of folks that are still undiscovered and the opportunity it is for us to go back and really learn more about them, if we can get this book, you know, embraced, you know, in the right circles, it provides educators with just a huge, huge Rolodex to go down. So many different writing prompts. I mean, there's so much that you can just uncover with all of that. And it will be fun for kids to just start discovering names and folks they've never heard of, but can maybe start to point out things that they are necessarily, I would say, enjoying now or benefiting from now that they had no idea was because of the contribution of a Black man in history, you know? And I think to me, that would just speak volumes.
Absolutely. And I want to say, we're going to talk about this at the end too. Funds raised from the book sales after this will go to the Dominique Hoskins Black History Museum. And let me tell you the story behind that. Dominique Hoskins' grandmother is Carolyn Hoskins, Mrs. Carolyn Hoskins. And when he was 5 years old, it was Black History Month. And he said, Grandma, really? Do we not have anybody besides MLK? My teachers keep asking me to do reports on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And she thought, we are not serving our children well. And from that, Dominique is now, I believe, 28 years old and a father himself. And from that, she started a museum that is 22,000 square feet of Black history.
Wow.
She's in her garage. Yes, it's a pop-up, but much bigger than one would expect. Not for the history, but a pop-up could be 22,000 square feet. And she has a table of Black inventors. She's got, of course, you know, politicians, Congressman John Lewis. It is phenomenal, but it came from that we're teaching the same, you know, 3, 4, 5 people all the time. And we're teaching it only during the shortest month of the year. Also a problem. So yeah, so proceeds from this will go to the Dominique Hoskins Museum, as well a copy of Black Boy, Black Boy. Thank you very much. So I wanted to ask, when you're talking about people you left and took out, you both met playing soccer. Was there a soccer player you had to leave on the field as you were making choices, or take off the field? I'm getting my metaphors wrong.
Well, the one soccer player that I think perhaps could have been on there would have had to have probably been Pele,
Right.
With what he came across and the contributions that he's still able to give to the sport of soccer. I think his name would have been the one that wasn't on there. There's a lot of athletes, and there's tons of athletes. A lot of lone athletes. There's Thurgood Marshall. There's Langston Hughes. Talking about John Lewis. I mean, the list can go on what we try to do with each of these individuals, that we only are scraping the surface. And so there's, for every category that we have someone in this book, there are at least 8 to 10 other individuals that kind of fit that same sort of either politician or an athlete or an entertainer or an engineer. There's all these other ones. So it gives the ability to be able to do a little bit more research and find out who else has done something in this sort of field. And that's the whole hope of it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we have noticed Dr. Stroud mentioned before the palette. I'm going to go share a screen again. And oftentimes, and people outside children's literature don't normally know this, but authors and illustrators do not communicate, normally, oftentimes do not meet, because authors have very specific thoughts and illustrators have very specific thoughts, and it could not always mesh. This book is stunning. What input did you have with the illustrations? It sounds like with the Colin Kaepernick page, you were saying we want flags not to be front and center. So was there communication with your illustrator?
This is all from the brilliance of Ken Daly, and he he also worked close in hand with some in-house reps from Source Books, and honestly, we love that everybody is able to just take it in. I mean, how can you not? Because honestly, it is breathtaking, and for first-time authors, you see your words come to life with depictions like this, you're just absolutely blown away. Thankfully for us, Source Books was very welcoming in us sharing ideas, but we didn't really have to give much, whenever a spread came back, we wrote, like, we just can't wait to see what it's going to look like. So just have at it. And I think they were also very smart to make sure they weren't like sending us bits by bits all the time, because that would probably slow it down. But they just entrusted him with what he was doing, and we did too, because we got to see his some of his previous works. And what stood out to us was his vivid use of color. He really, it's just amazing in what he does. But when he brought this thing out, yeah, I mean, the young boy looks just like both of our sons. How you can encapsulate and capture that for 2 different men, is amazing. And we didn't send him any pictures, he didn't have anything of that. So we just happened to believe that this was all supposed to be, and it was meant to happen this way, because you can't get something come out like that, especially, with all and how it happened, and not really sort of believe in that intention. But yeah, this was all Ken Daly. He's been a master at this, and we are just super blessed that he jumped on the story with us,
Outstanding. Thank you. So I'm going to ask all of you, and start with Dr. Stroud. You are all parents. What books did you make sure you read to your children? And what books spoke to you when you were growing up? Did you see yourself in books? It's a whole long question. So what did you read to your children? What did you wish you had for your children? I'm thinking Dr. Stroud might have wished to have had this for her daughter, Black Boy, but her daughter is now grown. So Dr. Stroud, I'm going to start with you. What did you read with your daughter, Kimball?
Yeah.
And what did you wish you had?
We read the Spike Lee baby. I can't feel it. No Baby No. Is that what it's called? I can't remember. I can't remember, but the pages are ripped. We read it so much that's the one that just I remember came to mind, because we read it so much that one of the pages finally ripped. And luckily, I had more books to read to her of Black people than I had as a child, and there was a book, one of my favorite books as a child, because I'm older than these gentlemen, but younger than you, Sharon. Sharon, I went to college. It was I don't remember the publisher, but it was come over to my house, and it was these images of international homes and children. Now, it's probably very stereotypical, honestly. But for me, it was huge. Talk about windows. It was like, there are people out there who look like me. There are people out there who live in different types of homes than I do. There is, and it was to me, it was very exciting to see that everybody didn't have to live in kind of a suburban track house, as some of the folks that I saw in my youth. So that I still think of that day, at least for the time that I was growing up. That was sort of my window to diversity. And I want to throw one more plug in here while I've got the mic. If you have a waiting room where there are children, if you're a pediatrician, if you are a children's mental health provider, if you're a WIC office, put this book in your waiting room. put this book in your waiting room, because again, for me, books are a privilege for some. I want access. And that's a place where children are, and they don't even have to read the visuals, because children get very excited about visuals. Skimming through that book is going to be a lovely experience for the children in your waiting room, regardless of the color of their skin.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. And I will go to Ali next. What books did you have? Because you grew up in Sierra Leone, at least till you were 13. So,
Yes, correct. So mine is definitely very similar to what Dr. Stroud mentioned. We talk about this when we do these podcasts, is that especially for us, in growing up, we didn't really have a lot of books that spoke to our own existence and celebrated that. More so for me in growing up in West Africa, a lot of the literature and stuff that we were presented with, was always from a European perspective, of course. Read a lot of Shakespeare, stuff that I definitely don't to this day remember. Um, so I wouldn't be able to say that, I would identify with it. But it's certainly, and at that age, I did not understand. It was definitely a window to look into things. And I think it's what helped me in my transition when I moved to this country to be able to accept others and not necessarily be afraid of that, and celebrate them, and that's why we were recognizing why it's important now for kids to see this. And because I think that also was why maybe as a first-time father, I did not start out intentional about what my kids were reading. I didn't really see that behind it. And so it was just more about, oh, what's a good trend? What seems like it's fun? Here you go. But it was a wake-up call when Mr. Floyd was murdered, and we felt our need of like, whoa, shoot, okay, this is real. Maybe we have not experienced some of these things you hear about, and you might feel like it's a stereotype, but in actuality, it's a reality a lot of folks live with. And so let's be very intentional about the representation we put out. So for me, when I was young, even though I lived in Sierra Leone, I think Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart was definitely a book that I read that I wouldn't say I identified with, but at least it would speak to me because it was from West Africa. When I grew older, I will be honest and confess, I don't read a lot before George tries to just run me under the table and make fun of me. I didn't used to until a good friend of mine, Ishmael Bia, became a published author, and his works, the very first one was so jarring but so beautifully written that you took to it and you had to read it. Then his follow-ups were a lot more, I would say, easier to take in, and it allowed me to start to identify with all that because these were characters then that are from my part of the world. So I appreciate that, and especially his use of language, really just draws you in. But I remember reading to my kids, maybe I pronounced this wrong, is it the Bernstein Bears?
Berenstain.
Bernstein, yep.
I could be wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, we go back and forth with it. I said I'll
Mhm.
throw it out, and if I'm wrong, hey, sorry. The Given Tree was another one, that we sort of have gone through. But what became so awesome is as they got older, my daughter is now 11, my son's turning 10, to see that they actually have material that's available. So my daughter is reading Tristan Strong and Amari, and so's my son. And then here, George and I are getting to go to panels and meet some of these authors. So, we're coming home like real celebrities. I'm like, hey, man, I met Kwame and Malia. It's like, yay! So it was cool to see the impact, though, that these things do have on our kids, but actually pay attention to it. And I think that's going to be a driving force for us in moving forward to make sure we create material and content that, even if you're going to create it to Black kids, it's not necessarily just for them, but at least to speak to them. And I think that's why we also celebrate Jason Reynolds. He's been teaching us about that and how he approaches this too. And I think it's just a powerful way to create, So, but yeah, those were mine, at least in growing up.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And you've dropped some great names in there. Kwame Mbalia, Jason Reynolds, B.B. Alston. I mean, there's great people turning out fantastic.
A lot of good material out there. Yes. Oh, yes.
Yes. Yes. And much more than there used to be. Absolutely.
Oh, man.
And still not enough.
Just the covers alone, when you go into these festivals and you see that, this is like, you're like a kid in a candy store all of a sudden. I'm like, yeah, this is wasted on me right now. My daughter would not leave. But daddy's just over here passing by. I'm like, oh, yeah. But it's just cool to see that much more diversity in kids literature, because it really is important.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Thank you. And Jorge, how about you? Did you, I'm looking at your name and going, Jorge. George.
Yes, you did it.
Did you bet I was going to do that?
In my head, I was
Okay.
hoping that you would, because that's my joke with him. So I was like, maybe you guys knew each other. That's how we met. Long story, but continue. Yes, I thought he was Jorge.
He had said before we started recording, he said, I know it's spelled Jorge, but I pronounce it George. And I wrote George on my notes, and I looked up, saw the name, and immediately went to Jorge.
Yep, he tried to be so cool, man, with the jab. Just kidding. Sorry, continue.
Okay, I am
I
so
am
sorry,
cool,
George.
Ali. I am cool. It's weird as I kind of look back. When I grew up, I just didn't like to read. I mean, it was just one of those things, and luckily, my mother was able to see that and make the decisions to put me in a reading clinic, right? And that's sort of the things I think that helped me become a parent worthy enough to be able to not only open my eyes to see inadequacy to my kids, but to take the initiative to be able to help them. And that's what she showed me. And so I didn't read that much. I was always outside playing soccer, playing, out in the street or in the woods. And it wasn't, I didn't see many as similar to Ali. There wasn't as much literature out there for us. I want to say the first book I do remember that had maybe a brown boy in it was Sounder, I believe. I was trying to think of a book in the South dealing with kind of that. And so that's kind of what my initial thought was when I was reflecting back as to what kind of book that I first kind of perhaps envisioned myself in and saw myself in as a mirror. And now as I look back as a parent, it's ironic because the first things that we want to do for our kids is educate them. We want to educate them on numbers, on colors, on alphabets, right? And history is like later on, as it should be, because first you want to read, but those sorts of things are the things that I remember with my kid. I remember, of course, reading a bunch of Dora books. I remember reading a bunch of Eric Carle, Brown Bear, What Do You See books, Dr. Seuss. I'm all into rhyming. And so Adam Silverstein, so I'm always into things with rhymings. It allows me to be able to playfully be able to engage them in reading. And of course, now my kids are in Battle of the Books and they're reading chapter books. And like Ali said, some of them are reading Tristan Strong, some of them are reading Stamped. The wealth of matureness and an understanding of diversity with my kids makes me feel that my mom has done justice in her decision making and allowing me to be able to understand that although I have faults, there's still faults that can be addressed, and as opposed to running from it. And so that's the kind of experience I have with reading.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. And you mentioned Brown Bear, Brown Bear. The cadence in Black Boy is very similar. Is that a nod to Brown Bear, Brown Bear?
It is, yes.
Yeah, I love it because it really flows and you can feel it. And I will give a shout out to my future son-in-law because he saw the cover and he said, "Oh, it's like Brown Bear, Brown Bear." And I'm like, "What?"
He got it. Yeah. Well done. Kids.
These young kids are sharp, honey.
Yes, kids. That is awesome.
Yeah, sharp is not normally the word I use to describe me. Okay. I'll leave. I want to make sure that we have time for this. Can you tell us more about, is it Salone or Salone Rising?
Yes, Salone Rising.
Salone Rising. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's just in brief. Thankfully, it's a not-for-profit that's out in Sierra Leone. I was very fortunate to link up with a brilliant and wonderful man in Denver, Colorado named Devin Harwell and his family foundation. And so what it is that we do is our aim is to empower people and enterprises is how we, go about saying that. And we run 2 flagships. Our very first one is a micro enterprise division, which focuses on like financial literacy for poor and uneducated folks, primarily women who are petty traders, but also trying to get them access to points of access of cash. And so what we started with is we give them grants, and then we are trying to work our way into where we can offer them after they've proven with a good credit history, small petty loans. But we want to take out the microfinance incentive of profiteering, which really just hinders their growth. because we recognize back in, well, in a lot of developing countries, women truly are the breadwinners in the house. And, you know, a lot of folks don't see that, or at least put support into that. But, you know, that mom wants to make sure every day that child's fed, they've got clothes on their backs, you know, and sometimes, as bad as it sounds, the father might, you know, without having a job, feel like he's still going to figure it out at some point. But, you know, mom doesn't have that luxury. So we targeted primarily women, and we have about 300 and I think 30 grantees to date that we work with, in providing them this access, and also financial security. We focus on savings, you know, and a few other things that are still in the works. Our second flagship is a children's community that we are shaping after Shanti Bhavan. And the hope of that is to, again, make sure we can provide the right space for kids, and again, primarily girls, to find a way to grow through poverty, but provide them with the educational access, so that they can actually find a way to move themselves out of their situations, you know. So we are very excited about it. We are 5 years into the program. With our children's community, we have 20 kids right now, 20 girls. We are hoping to get to 50. The youngest girl right now is, I think, 5, and our oldest is 13. And if you want to learn more about it, you can visit us either on Instagram at Salon Rising, or you can follow our blog at heartbeatsofsalon.com.
Excellent.
So yeah, it's I think one of my biggest blessings in life is being able to provide something like this, because the truth is nothing can make you happier than when you can impact someone else's life, but then you start recognizing that they're doing a lot more for you, you know, because when you see what folks deal with and how they go through things, it really, and I think Dr. Stroud put it in perspective. It puts your life in perspective. And for me, it just makes me appreciate the blessings I have. So it's a beautiful thing. It's a great journey.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for doing that work. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I am
I'm very
sorry for
blessed.
my ignorance. What is Shanti Baba?
Shanti Bhavan, this was a school out in India started by Dr. George. And it's one of those where he went up against the same poverty issue, but with the caste system in India, to where he provided the schooling and housing for kids to be able to come and learn. And then some of his kids right now who have graduated his program are working at, like, whether it's through MIT or some big name companies, you know, but he really provided the model in going into poor situations, but removing these sort of cultural barriers that, you know, in those communities you don't see, kids are really struggling with, whether it's like extra chores or stuff here you would see like child labor and all this, but back there kids don't have a choice because the families need them to do this to earn an income. So it's going in and trying to take all of that out, but just provide them with a loving home and then give them access to quality education, and you just see kids thrive, you know. So again, it was that perspective again for me to witness that and seeing that and saying, man, I live in the US, so many things you take for granted. I mean, you get back into a country like Sierra Leone and you're like, oh yeah, I better take this seriously. So, but yeah, that's Shanti Bhavan. It's a great school.
It sounds wonderful. I am going to call on Dr. Stroud for a minute because
so primarily I'm also titled as an infant mental health specialist. So basically, and this is a professional experience that is not taught in the graduate system. So folks are learning it postgraduate, and I taught in a lot of postgraduate programs. These are, I identify it for folks is for kids who've had pre-verbal before they have language, have had trauma before they've developed language. So working with that is a non-verbal intervention, and most therapists are only taught in verbal interventions. So that's my specialty, and that's what I teach all over the country, and also on occasion in other parts of the world. I did want to drop a note to the authors. I was given a copy of Black Boy, which I'm actually going to donate to a family daycare in Oakland. So I'm going to make sure that gets to kids who need it. And when I have my child is now 20. So when I have grandkids, I'll just buy another copy. But for now, I think other children could probably benefit from this book.
No pressure, Kimball.
No rush. How about that?
Yeah, no rush.
No rush.
I love it.
So speaking again of Black Boy, you have a follow-up coming, Black Girl. So I'm going to put Dr. Stroud on the spot first and ask her who she would like to see in Black Girl, and then ask you, Ali and George, who actually is it going to be in Black Girl.
And the list is long, but I would love to see bell hooks and they're in that, and they're like, we didn't even think of her. She had to die before people knew of her brilliance. And it just, I mean, so I'm just gonna, and of course I would love to see Angela Davis there, because like, ooh, but I'm sure these are hard choices, and those are the only names that I want to just throw on the brain.
There you go.
I love that. All right, Dr. Stroud, where were you at when we were trying to get this started, man?
Right, right.
You didn't call me. I mean, everyone, all of a sudden, everybody's like, Bellix. I'm like, Bellix is not a new name. Anyway.
No, I'll let George sort of share some of the names, but you're so right. I think that's where at first, even for a Black man like myself, I felt embarrassed because, I was like, man, I don't know these folks. But what I think is the bigger lesson for me is not to sit there and blame, the institutions and all that, even though they've got the big parts of it. It's like, well, technology is available. There's things happening. What am I doing to go learn about that? So again, that's part of our challenge that we are excited to get in front of kids and share that is you can't wait for someone to teach you some of these things. You're inquisitive enough, you're curious, start learning. But yeah, that's a name we definitely should have known. Unfortunately, Georgie Red, you have to tell us that we don't have her in there.
Can you do this?
There's no shortage of brilliant women to put in the book. So.
No, there isn't. But please, George, go ahead and share that. We've got a couple.
Obviously, Misty Copeland is in there.
We got Mira Makeba.
Harris. Yep.
We put Ava DuVernay.
Yep. Who else, Ali?
We've got Wilma Rudolph. Carol, May Carol Jemison?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I think because those were the 9. We have Adelaide Casey Hayford. She was out of Sierra Leone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
So part of that too was the same thing that we did with the boys book, was to definitely go after names who, we would say don't know. And then just use that. But we're going to use what you just said as that writing prompt to make sure those are names that you mention in to allow kids to at least give them something to start searching for. And then we'll see who else they discover, But it's, when you start at 45, that's how old I am, start recognizing that, man, you don't know that much about Black history. It actually becomes fun for me now because I get to do this with my own kids, and so that's what George and I were excited about, and we want to welcome that opportunity. So it's like, all right, well, if I want my kids to learn, I'll learn with them, and I can't wait, So as we're picking up some of these names, Bell Hooks, that was,
That's okay. There's a lot of great names. I get it.
No, we also have we started to meander around whether we wanted to start changing some names. And then just this past week, we started getting some images. So all of a sudden, we're like, maybe we're running late. So we probably need to get this out early to tell them, hey, we might have some new additions, some changes before they start drawing up characters. So you never know, Dr. Stroud, you might be pleasantly surprised. You never know. Let's see what happens.
You are the authors. You're doing a wonderful job.
You are.
Thank you.
Do you have the same wonderful illustrator for Black Girl, Black Girl?
No. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to have a Black female illustrated, right? Similar to Ken doing it for Black Boy, Black Boy. We wanted to make sure that we were diverse in our selection as well as equal opportunity, equal access, and what better way to show Black girls the brilliance of their mind than someone who's artistically able to do that as well. So that's what we're hoping, and we're going through right now actually some of the drafts with an illustrator for finalization.
Got it. We're not sharing her name yet, though.
We could, but we're not sure what's going to happen. It's
okay.
Just in case. Just in case, to be on the safe side.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. I do want to say, and normally I don't talk about what I do in these things because it's about you all, but Dr. Stroud knows that my daughter and I teach 5th through 10th grades Black civil rights history through the lens of children's literature. We only use children's books, mainly picture books. We will obviously be using Black Boy, Black Boy. because kids are taught the same 5. And the best way to approach it is you've got these wonderful books with 32 pages and many, many people. And it is a great way to learn history, because children's books especially focus on story. And grown-up books sometimes focus on facts and message, and they're boring. We're going to do children's books. And I do have a request for Black Girl, as you're working on it, because not everybody can be in there. The back matter, and for those who aren't in children's lit, that's not you guys, but the world, the back matter are the facts and the bibliography and all the little notes. And in fact, you do have back matter in Black Boy, that I will pull up. Notes on everybody who you talked about. And it would be so awesome to have a page. Oh, look at these end papers. A page of some of the women who didn't make it, with further information, further reading. So you can kind of cheat and get more people in than the 32 pages allow.
You just dropped a very, very good dime, and we're going to pick that up.
Yes, we are.
That was a very good one. But I think we would agree with that one. That's a great way to do that. Thank you for that one.
Thank you. And so let me ask, as we're winding up. Oh, so I'm sorry, Dr. Stroud.
No, I just want to say, Ali, in terms of your point of, we can be responsible for our own education, because the system is not going to teach Black history or Latinx history or Asian history well. And because the other thing I'm passionate about is deconstructing systemic racism. I know that's like going to take the rest of my life and multiple generations. But a significant way to attack that is through informing children very, very young of diversity and the pledge of really what equity means. Because if you deny access, I mean, the history is written by the victor. If you deny access, you control what people know. And then, right, so this book is another way to dismantle systemic racism. I just had to say that, Sharon, because it's what I spend my whole life doing.
It's true.
It's what you do, Dr. Stroud. It's what you do, man.
That's right.
I cannot believe we were meeting. This is awesome.
And yes, and you have now given Dr. Stroud an additional wonderful tool.
Yes.
Because that's what we have to do. And when you reach children, they grow up to be better adults. Yeah. And we know that, okay, it's not a surprise at all. We know that, if I'm a strong Democrat, that the GOP, it's my YouTube channel, I can say what I want. The GOP, we see what they're focusing on, right? They're focusing on education. They are flipping brilliant. I hate them, but they are brilliant at marketing, and they are brilliant at control. And look what they're targeting. They're targeting Black history. They're targeting LGBTQIA books and history. They know that's where you get people. And so teachers and advisors like Dr. Stroud and authors like you, George and Ali, you are the weapon we have, right, to fight this, is education and opening up kids' eyes in a non-pedantic way. This book is not pedantic. It's great. It's fun. It's got a great rhythm. It is eye-catching. This is how we win, is making sure that kids have, again, those mirrors, those windows, those sliding glass doors. And on that note, thank you all so very much. You kick booty. I really, really appreciate it. Quick housekeeping at the end. I'm pointing down. In theory, there will be a subscribe button for this YouTube channel. There's also an affiliates link for Books Inc., which is an independent bookstore. All books bought through that, a percentage of that link will go to, at this time, the Dominique Hoskins Museum. Each program will have a different nonprofit chosen. Again, thank you all. You are amazing and inspiring. And George and Ali, I hope we see many, many, many more books from you. Thank you so much. Okay,
thank you for having us.